Hey everybody, it's Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. I just wanted to go ahead and get our live stream started so that we can be punctual, even though we are not completely ready as of yet. So the live stream is started, so we will get officially started in a little bit. But if you have any questions or comments, you can just drop them in the live chat and I'll get to those as I can. We are going to be talking about the fifth episode of Supergirl Season 1 titled How Does She Do It? This is a very notable episode because this marks the start of the OG Kelly story arc. Very important to note right off the top. So we'll get to all of that and talk about, can Kara have it all? Can she have it all? That is the question. So we'll get Morgan's thoughts on this because she initially did not get to talk about this episode in season 1. That's why we're doing the Supergirl Radio Rewind episodes, which is difficult to say, a real mouthful, a lot of R's. Supergirl Radio Rewind. Try to say that 3 times fast. Not easy. But since Morgan didn't get to discuss these episodes, she hopped in, I think, during World's Finest. I'll double check that, but I think that's correct. And so we're going to be looking at the first 16 episodes of season 1 and just throwing it back. So if you have any season 1 thoughts, please share them in the live chat. And then next week, after this episode, we're going to be doing a character spotlight on Mr. Bones. We talk about Mr. Bones quite a lot on Supergirl Radio, even though he's never been on the Supergirl TV show. He has interacted with Supergirl in the comics, and we just love that weird character and think he's the greatest. And he's about to be in Stargirl season 3. He appeared at the end of Stargirl season 2 in the finale. So I have a feeling he's going to be around in season 3. So we're going to talk about Mr. Bones and educate everybody, get everybody caught up on his comic book history so that you'll be prepared going into Stargirl season 3. Very excited about it. So we'll be talking about Mr. Bones next week. So get ready for that. Yes, Mara in the chat mentions the most important part of Mr. Bones. Well, not the most important part. He does have cyanide sweat, but the most important part are his snappy suits and flashy ties. I think those really his dress is maybe the most important part. But cyanide sweat, a close second, very important to note. Also, Stargirl season 2, the finale had him wearing the gloves, so he must be trying not to use his cyanide sweat in Stargirl. So we'll have to see what happens in Stargirl season 3. Very excited about that. Morgan, I see you there. Are you ready to go?
I am. I was running behind because I have been catching up on Stargirl to try to prepare myself for the wonder, the mystery, the man of the hour, Mr. Bones. Not director yet. He hasn't climbed that ladder.
Yeah,
he hasn't gotten there yet.
No, he's not there yet.
We're earlier in his journey. But I'm surprising. I'm enjoying it. I'm close to the end of season 1, actually. I started like last week, so that should give you some idea of how bored I was and also how quickly I went through it. But yeah, I'm liking it. It's a good show.
Yeah, it's not the best TV show in the world, but it's enjoyable and it's it's just a feel good time, I think. So
I was really
stressed. Enjoying it.
I was really stressed last week, and like every time I was just like, just gonna put on a little Stargirl. This is just gonna zen me out. There's it's just a fun time, I think. Which sometimes you just need when you're watching TV.
Yeah, I think we still need to figure out how we're going to cover Mr. Bones on Stargirl. So maybe we'll chat about that later. But we definitely need to have a Bones watch of some kind for when he pops up. So we will definitely be talking some Mr. Bones here momentarily. I think on Stargirl, this is somewhere in between. This may be after his Infinity Inc. stuff. I don't know. I think Infinity Inc. is supposed to be in Stargirl season 3. So I'm curious as how they'll play him. We'll talk about that in our character spotlight. But that it's very interesting to me that they seem to be in the Infinity Inc. space for Mr. Bones. All right. Well, I think we will go ahead and officially get started, and we will talk about season 1 of Supergirl because Morgan didn't get to talk about this episode. So we'll get.
I'm reliving it.
So we'll get Morgan's thoughts after our official start to the live stream.
Leslie Lar's downfall is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse
what
me?
year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! ! Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're doing an intensely adequate podcast.
Good.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor Boardroom or Ballroom because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series, and really for this episode, the CBS's Supergirl TV series, and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the Supergirl Radio Facebook page and the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel to go back in time. We're going to do a little time traveling this week. And we're doing that because Morgan didn't get to review Supergirl episodes as a full-time co-host of Supergirl Radio until the episode World's Finest, which aired in March of 2016. So we're going to be revisiting the first season to get Morgan's thoughts. What did Morgan think about this episode? We have to know.
Everyone is asking.
So this week we'll be discussing season 1, episode 5, which is titled "How Does She Do It?" ? And it's worth noting, I think this is really the most important part of the episode, is that this is this marks the start of OG Kelly's character arc. We missed it the first time around. And so this time around, as we go back in time and go back through it, I think we should mention that just to bring everybody up to speed.
I thought that was an important thing I noticed while watching. I was like, oh, OG Kelly, the first shot of OG Kelly, and I was like, yes, so her journey begins. We know tragically how her journey ends, but this was the beginning. OG Kelly begins here.
Yeah, the start of her character arc is at work, and the end of her character arc is at work. So, really didn't get anything substantial with OG Kelly, but man, did she love her job.
She just loved it. And listen, she was serving us some emergency, some professionalism. Everything about OG Kelly was amazing in this episode. I was like, how did I miss you the first time?
So if you're watching along with us, we already did an audio commentary series on the OG Kelly arc.
One of our best episodes.
And we've also interviewed the actress, Carly Nycannon. So if you are interested in OG Kelly, more OG Kelly content, we are. We love OG Kelly. So I just wanted to mention that because I figured, we get lost in the weeds of like what Supergirl's doing. And
we
those
get
kinds
lost
of
in
things.
the insubstantial details, like about Kara's character arc. And we forget what really was the most important thing that happened.
So I just wanted to mention OG Kelly off the top because I know we were all thinking it. All right, so let's just get straight to it. We're going to do a little rewind back in time, and we're going to go back to season 1, episode 5. All right, so here is the official description of how does she do it. Quote, Kara's two identities are stretched thin when Supergirl must protect National City from a series of bombings, and Kara is tasked with babysitting Kat's son, Carter. Also, James is conflicted when his ex-girlfriend, Lucy Lane, seeks to rekindle their relationship, unquote. In this episode, just want to note that it aired November 23rd, 2015, which makes me feel extremely old.
2015. Oh boy. Ouch. That hit me in my age.
I guess that's maybe a good thing to start with, because I was thinking about this when I was rewatching the episode. Do you think it has the episodes have aged at all since now that you're looking back at it?
That's a good question. I honestly don't feel like they have. I think that you could have told me that episode went on like last year, and I'd be like, yeah, that seems right. I don't feel like now if we ever like decided to dive into say another season, perhaps a more topical season, season 4 maybe. I feel like that would have aged, and I feel like season 5 with all the technology stuff is going to end up aging quite badly. But I feel like that's the first couple seasons of the show have like a little bit more of a timeless quality to them. Like there's, I don't think that I felt like it was like this is a 2015 television show. It felt like this episode could have come out, recently, and I wouldn't have been surprised.
I think you're right about that. There is a timeless quality to it. Supergirl's just dealing with Supergirl things, and she's in her personal life as Kara, she's struggling with the will they won't they with James, which is pretty evergreen. That's not something that would date it as a show. So I think that's a good delineation between this season versus some other seasons that maybe point it directly to a time period. And I actually like those. I was thinking about how much I really enjoyed not having to deal, and maybe this is just me personally, like I like not having to deal with, for Supergirl, for this show, maybe in other iterations of comic book characters, I'm okay with dealing with heavier subjects, but for this show, it seemed to not handle them well. So I liked it. I liked it better when it was just dealing with good guys and bad guys and Supergirl doing Supergirl things. And so I think it really succeeded when it was doing those kinds of stories.
And I think season 1 was setting up the tone of the show, which in later seasons they would kind of be like, what if we were kind of a different show? And you're like, I don't know, you're pretty far into it now. But in season 1 it was like, this is kind of what the show is going to be about. It's going to be about Kara and her challenges as Supergirl and as Kara Danvers, and I think we were really getting the feel for it. And there were some things that would kind of maybe tie it to a time period. It's very much the how does she do it? Like, can you be a lady in business and a mother?
Can you have it all?
But the problem is, I feel like that stuff is unfortunately incredibly timeless. Like there were 30 Rock jokes about Liz Lemon like shoving a sandwich in her mouth and screaming, "I can have it all." So And that show predated this show by
Yeah.
like, 5 or so years too. So I feel like, in 10 years, we're going to be watching some show where it's like, a lady, can she have it all? And it's just going to be like, yeah, I guess we're still asking that question. I think Kat even says like, are we still asking this question? It's like, Kat, forever we shall be.
So, do you think that Kara succeeded in having it all in this episode, or do you think that not to spoil anything, but do you think she'll ever get there?
Well, I mean, I feel like maybe you could say by the end of the series, she was trying to have it all. She was trying to be both Kara Danvers and Supergirl as one package versus having like the secret identity. Now you could quibble about the secret identity wasn't really like, it was for her to be able to, protect her friends and her family and herself really. But I think from like a metaphorical standpoint, like
She's like, screw my family and friends.
You start thinking about it too long, you're like, oh, I feel like that might have been a mistake. Like, good for you for like working through your issues, but there might be some practicalities you might have wanted to consider. But I feel like from like a metaphorical standpoint, like at the end of the series was her going like, I'm going to be the editor of Catco, and I am going to let everybody know that I'm Supergirl, and I'm sure there'll be no conflict of interest situation there at all.
No consequences for this action.
Gonna be great. And you know what? If it's not, guess what? Show's over. Bye. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, in this episode, she obviously struggled to have it all because she was trying to be a good assistant and watch Kat's son, and he ended up on a explodey train. And she was trying to be a good superhero, and then there were 2 bombs, and she's only one person. So I mean, I think, and then she was trying to be both a good friend and also girlfriend material, and that didn't go well either. So I feel like she really struggled with the dichotomies in this episode. But I think what the episode was saying is like kind of everyone does, and that's really normal. And like, you need to walk before you run. That was Kat's advice. Like, you can't do all the things and be all the things all the time right away. And I think that, we're 5 episodes into the first season, and they're kind of trying to set the stage of like, this is Supergirl really early in becoming a superhero, and she's going to face some struggles and about having to figure out how to be a superhero.
And I guess she's not the only character in the episode that deals with that. Now that I'm thinking about that, like, James was trying to have it all at Catco and with his friendship with Kara, and then Lucy Lane shows up and he doesn't know what to do about her, so he's trying to have it all in a lot of ways too. Because at the end, it seems like James and Lucy have rekindled their relationship. So there's some stuff that James is juggling. When, of course, is trying to have it all, because there's still a little hint in this episode that he has feelings for Kara. So there's and I guess even Maxwell Lord can't seem to have it all because he's trying to make this super fast train, and one of his employees blows it up.
And then spoiler alert, he's like, it was an evil plan that I had, but also I didn't want it to mess up my actual train. He's like, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, Supergirl, that I was trying to test you by using the lives of innocent people, but also that I love trains. He's like, I would have never done anything to hurt Trainsy over there.
So I do think that other characters besides Kara do struggle with it. Kat struggled with it. She won this big award that she beat Lois Lane for, and her mother didn't seem to be all that impressed or supportive of her to watch Carter. So even Kat's struggling to have it all, but I think it's really important to dive into that with Supergirl, because she is a character who could theoretically, as much as anybody can, be in 2 places at once. This episode, she could not physically be there, but she can zoom around and do these things. She can forget to pick up Carter and then fly super fast to go pick him up at school. No problem. She can make that work over the earbud, I guess. But she can do things that other people can't, but even she still struggles with that. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
I saw in the chat that Rachel mentioned, and I think rightly, that she says, I feel later on having it all is a problem that shifts to Alex, which I think is true. I think is true because later on in the series, we get a lot of like, can I be the director of the DEO? First off, period. Can I be? Question mark. The answer the show gave her was no. But it was like, can I work at the DEO in this dangerous job and also adopt a baby I do think that there was a lot of Alex Danvers, can she have it all? Which kind of switched from like early seasons where it was like about Kara trying to juggle all the different aspects of her identity.
Which seemed inconsistent with Alex because their solution to that problem was, okay, Alex wants to adopt a baby. We'll make her the director of the DEO. Then she's director of the DEO for not even a season, if I remember correctly. And then she goes back into the field and does all these dangerous things, and then becomes Sentinel, which is even more dangerous.
I know. At least nominally in the beginning, she was like, it doesn't make sense for me if I want to be a single mother to have a dangerous job out in the field. So I'll get this desk job as like upper management. And then upper management was like, we still don't trust you. We're putting somebody above you. You're still a middle manager. But then like later on in the series, you're right. She's like, you know what is definitely safe for a child situation? Being a vigilante.
And then marrying another vigilante.
And then she's like, but don't worry, Kelly's the stable one. Kelly's like, I got a secret. I've been thinking. I've been workshopping this thing. Honey, do you like it? And instead of Alex being like, one of us should be like the responsible one, she's like, girl, I love it. Yeah, it is funny that they both ended up as like, I mean, this happens in like superhero stuff all the time. The problem was that they like drew a line under it and made you think about it. It was not so much because like you watch all these superhero shows and it's like, mom is doing this and dad is doing that. And you're like, ooh, like what happens if the villains take you guys both out, and there's a backup plan for that? But like in this show, they had her think like, well, it's dangerous to do this, so I shouldn't do it. And then like later on, she's just like, I'm a vigilante now, and you're like, you didn't even want to like be a DEO agent. Like this is arguably so much more dangerous.
Yeah, so all the characters on the show deal with the question of how do they do it? Can they have it all to some degree? But I really liked the way it was approached with Kara, because I think by the end of the episode, let me know, Morgan, if you disagree, but it seemed like Kara somewhat had it all by the end of it. She had a good time with Carter. They had an epic Nerf gun battle. She had saved Carter from being blown up, which is a big plus because that way she didn't get in trouble with Kat. Well, she still got in trouble with Kat, but not to that degree. And then she also established some rules for boundaries with James a little bit, and even helped Lucy out, even though that was not to her benefit. So I thought Kara ended up reconciling some things that she was struggling with earlier in the episode.
Yeah, I do think that she did manage to do a pretty good job, even though she didn't like do the best. She wasn't the best babysitter because again, he got on the explodey train. And she wasn't the best at her romantic life, and she wasn't really she did the best she could as Supergirl, but like I think we saw her juggle all these aspects of her like personality as best as she could. She was juggling as many jobs as she possibly could do, and some things fell down. Like maybe she shouldn't have put Wynn in charge of Carter, and maybe Wynn should have like not just wandered away from a child in an office for a long time and then come back and was like, oh, where did he go? Like, how did Carter get to the train? Like, was that close by? Or is Carter just really good at navigating the city's like public transportation?
It could be either option. I was thinking while I was rewatching it that Catco is probably downtown near that building, and so it was probably within walking distance, is my guess. But I don't know. I mean, he seems like a smart kid. He probably had some money. Cat probably gives him an allowance. and he probably figured out the mass transportation. So I wouldn't put it past him to get down there on his own.
I see that Aaron in the chat says that Alex was director of the DEO for a season and a half, seasons 4 and 5.
Oh, well, thank you for the correction, Aaron. I did not recall. Maybe it's because I've repressed so much of season 5, but I did not remember Alex being the director of the DEO in season 5. Huh.
I feel like the season 4 thing is tough because she was the director, and then Colonel Haley they brought in for a while, like a long while, as like kind of her superior. So she was the boss kind of, but she had a boss. But I think I saw somebody in the chat say that like in season 5 she was like back to being the director of the DEO, and then she like quit. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
To it was she?
I'm so having to relive everything in this discussion, because New Rachel says Haley basically takes over for the rest of season 4. Then Alex is in charge again for the first half of season 5. And after Crisis, Lex is in charge and Alex quits. So Brainy leads the DEO. I completely forgot that Brainiac 5 was the director of the DEO for some reason. I forgot all about that.
You would be excused for forgetting that, because I don't think that show really did anything with it. I think the show kind of forgot, and then they were like, "Ooh, did we want to do something with the DEO next year?" And they're like, "Blow it up."
That's right. He was in charge and the DEO came down because of Ramakan. That's what happened.
That scoundrel.
That's what happened.
That was before Ramakan went on his Rama retirement. He was like, one last one before I go.
That solidified Ramakan is a great Supergirl character. So thank you to everybody in the live chat for catching us up on that, because I had forgotten. So I guess we talked about the explodey train. So I'm curious, Morgan, about your thoughts on Maxwell Lord and what he had going on in this episode.
You know, watching this episode again, I was like, I feel like this is such a good episode of Supergirl. It's kind of like, unfortunately, coming off of that last season, which was like less good. Let's put it generously, less good. You forget like how good it was in the first season, and like how many things that they were juggling in this episode alone, like storylines and character arcs and like drama. And to like make everything feel like it really had stakes and was compelling, and like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, how is she going to save the airport, and how is she going to save the train? And what's going to happen with John and all of these things. Like, there were even like some really, really small storylines that moved forward in this episode, like Kara being a little suspicious of John, and like seeing his red Martian eyes that we know now, but at the time it was like, is he evil? And I just feel like they did things so well, where later in the show it would be like a bunch of storylines. Things wouldn't really connect together so much, or they would connect together really superficially through like a word. It's like teamwork is the word of the day.
Yes.
Whereas like these storylines really connected together like thematically. So like Kat's trying to do it all, and so is Kara, and so is Jimmy, you know. And you really get a lot of these characters, and to have that episode where so much is going on with all these characters, and then really introduce Maxwell Lord in like a real big way in this episode. I think this is his biggest episode so far in terms of introduction. We get his backstory and some of his motivations for being the way he is. We hear about how he doesn't trust anyone because his family were scientists.
Specifically, he doesn't trust the government.
He doesn't trust the government. And Alex works for the government. And so he talks about how his family were scientists working on some sort of like airborne pathogens, it seemed like, and then that ended up killing them, and then the government covered it up. And so I really liked getting that backstory on Maxwell Lord, and like it to have like a nice villain who's got like a compelling backstory, who can also like seemingly be like kind of morally gray and then suddenly start chomping some scenery at the end. I feel like Maxwell Lord was like just such a good, like the first couple seasons had such good villains, because season 2's villains were also like chef's kiss. But Maxwell Lord was a great villain, and I like that, like that turn, that sort of villain turn he does at the end, where like you're just starting to be like, Maxwell Lord, you know what? I thought that guy was a jerk, but maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe he's just like traumatized and sad and too rich and too obsessed with trains. And then you get to the end and he's like, actually, I did all of these things to test your speed and your strength and your agility. It's like, oh, I love that moment of the other shoe dropping. And I love that Kara figured it out too. I feel like in later seasons, they might have underlined the journey she took to figure that out. It might have been like you would have had to see her do something visually, or she would have had to like circle a thing and circle another thing, or somebody, more likely somebody would have had to tell her.
Yes, somebody else would have figured it out.
Season 6, she wasn't doing her own like legwork anymore. But in the like this season, you just kind of see her think about it, and then you know in the next scene when she confronts him that she's put things together. And I like being able to see a Supergirl who is clever as well as like strong.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because in season 1, Kara is the focal point. She doesn't have a super friend team as of yet, and it's nice to get to see her do things on her own and get to make those connections to things on her own. And I thought your point, Morgan, and also Miss Fiction Fanatic's point, in addition to that, who says it was nice to see storylines that connected together instead of being dropped with no explanation. I think that's a really good point, because they did things like Supergirl seeing Jean, or I guess Hank's eyes. To her, he would be Hank at that point, but seeing his eyes is not it's visually done, but it's subtly done. You have to put it together as an audience member to figure out, okay, there's something going on with him, and Supergirl's seeing it now. What is she going to do about that? So I like the way that they're interweaving some of the things, even dropping Kat's mother into this episode. That's something that will come into play again in season 1. So things like that are really, I hate to say masterfully done for television, because there's some really great TV shows out there. But for Supergirl, it's been pretty masterfully done in season 1, because they were able to handle the foreshadowing what was to come. And so it tells me that they had a really solid plan going into this episode.
I just think that season 1 of Supergirl, like that show was good at what it was doing. Like it knew what it wanted to be, and it was good at what it was doing. And later seasons wouldn't necessarily I think later seasons would be more up and down in quality. Like there'd be some really great episodes, and then there'd be some real clunkers. And season 1 just seemed to have like a little bit more of a vision, which I mean, I think if you know some of the behind the scenes stuff that was going on the show, you can kind of see it in the end product of like there were a lot of behind the scenes shakeups, and you could sort of feel that as seasons went along and started feeling like a lot different season to season. You're like, wait, what? But season 1 had more of a coherent feel, because it didn't have all that like that baggage of previous seasons, so it could kind of just do what it wanted. And this episode, I think in particular, of all the ones that we've watched so far, felt like it was really doing a lot of things at once. It was keeping a lot of balls in the air, but it was doing so in a really entertaining way. I didn't feel like it was overstretching the story at any point in this episode. I was like really into all of the stories it was telling. Even the dumb romantic ones I didn't care about, but I was like, you know what? This is done like entertainingly. So I'm not going to complain about it quite yet. But I actually see that CM Gutierrez had a question that I actually also had in the chat. She says, does anyone remember what career Kat's mom had that made her too busy to babysit Carter?
It's not mentioned in the episode because I think Kat just says that she prioritized her career over Kat's career. I'm trying to see if I can go back into the notes and see if I can find them. I'm trying to go into the Arrowverse wiki But I know Kat's mother does show up, so we'll probably talk about her. I don't remember which episode it is when. Okay, so Catherine Grant. All right, hang on a second. I'm going to the Arrowverse wiki. Let me see. Let's see. She shows up. So she's played by Joan Juliet Buck. Her first appearance is I think the next episode in Red Faced is when we will see her. So foreshadowing for the next episode is what happened in How Does She Do It. So it looks like we'll get to Catherine Grant with a K here. We'll get to her in the next episode of Supergirl Radio Rewind. So, but in this episode, it's not mentioned as to what she does for a living. So we'll answer that next time around. We'll have to remember that. So Morgan, you mentioned that there were things that were really entertaining about this episode and things that you thought were really well done. What were some of those things? Did you have any like favorite moments or scenes?
I really liked the scenes that she had with Carter, Kat's son. I thought that it was really nice to see Supergirl and also Kara interacting with, like, I think every time you put Kara or Supergirl with kids, it's always magic. And when she has that scene where she picks him up and she's just like, "Do they teach you to talk at school?" And he starts to break a little bit and laugh at her. I thought that was really cute. And then the scene where Kat kind of he tells her how cool it was that Supergirl saved them and how pretty Supergirl is, which is such like a little boy thing to be like, and she was so cute. And she's like, well, what else did you notice about her? Did you notice she was smart or that she was like brave? And he was like, oh, she had great legs. And like that when Kat realizes that like he's telling a joke and like he's usually kind of a really serious kid and he's like lightened up. I thought that was such a cute moment and tells me so much about their relationship because we don't see a lot of Kat and her son together in this episode. And so they have to kind of establish that mother-son relationship like with really quickly with not much, dialogue or screen time. I thought that really did show me like what their relationship is like and her telling him like, there's a lot of reasons that Supergirl is great, not just because she's pretty. It's like, why she's valuable. You have to like look beyond appearances and him being 100% on board, but also like needling his mom a little bit felt like something like a boy of that age would totally do.
Yeah, and he was wide-eyed when he saw Supergirl on that train, and I
So
thought
cute.
that was really cute. Just FYI, Morgan, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh no.
I'll hopefully the internet connection will stay okay, but I just wanted to let you know just in case on the off chance there was something that could be fixed about it. But
we've been having some like rain actually now, so maybe
it's probably
interrupting.
weather related, I'm sure. So one of the things that I thought was great about that is in terms of Kat and her son is that through their relationship, the audience, I got to see a little softer side of Kat. Kat is very commanding and she's very hard on Kara, but when we see her with Carter, she is really loving towards him, and through Kara and Carter's conversation at the school, Carter tells Kara that his mom was very encouraging and saying that even the nerds can win in the end. So I thought that was really nice that through Carter we could see what Kat was like as a mom, that she was a little bit different maybe at home than she was at work, trying to have it all. So I thought that was a nice way to use Carter in the episode.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah. So one of my favorite sequences in the episode is the train. I know we're talking about Maxwell Lord's train quite a bit.
Maxwell Lord, we just love that train.
we just love trains. But the Super Rail is one of the best, in my opinion, Supergirl sequences of the entire show. It does seem a little bit the CGI is a little bit dated at this point, just a little bit. But it's still a great and fantastic sequence, not only because Supergirl gets to do something only Supergirl can do, which is stop a train just with her with her strength. But she also, one of the things I think is a really nice small touch in that sequence is that when the guy who has the bomb strapped to him, when he's by himself, he's, Supergirl's used her heat vision and cut off the front part of the train. She uses her, to me, this is how I interpret it. She uses her telescopic vision to zoom in and see his reaction and see what's happened to him. And I thought that was such a nice touch, that she didn't just walk away from that she cared about that man until, he was no longer living. So I thought that was a really nice Supergirl moment. So it's cool that she stops the train and does something awesome, but that personal touch I thought was always really well done in the first season.
Yeah, I like that she went into the train car with him and tried to like talk him down essentially. And that's also how she figures out through that conversation with him that Maxwell Lord was behind the whole thing, which I think is another demonstration of what makes Supergirl such a strong character, is that through those conversations, like personal touch that she has with people, she can like use that information to put things together. If she hadn't tried to stop him from blowing himself up, she would have never known, like put that together, that, Maxwell Lord was essentially using this guy.
Yeah, she's Supergirl in that moment because she's got the suit on, but she's being a reporter. She's being an investigative reporter in that moment because she's getting information out of him that she wouldn't have otherwise, and then she's using that information to put the pieces together. So I like that. She's a reporter, even though she's not one as of yet. She's still Kat's assistant in season 1 in this episode, but she shows some reporter instincts as well. Well, I'm curious about your thoughts, Morgan, on Lucy Lane's appearance in this episode. So what are your thoughts on the building love triangle? There's many love triangles in season 1, but specifically in this episode, there is the Kara, James, Lucy love triangle. So what are your thoughts on that?
I can't remember. Had Lucy popped up in the last episode? I feel like she did, right?
I think she showed up at the end.
I think so. I don't feel like there was a lot of Lucy in the last one.
I think this was like full blown Lucy Lane.
Yeah, I think this was the big Lucy kind of episode that kind of introduced her in.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I liked Lucy in this one, and I thought that they introduced her in here well. We get a little bit about her and James's backstory. We know what she does, that she's a lawyer, like a JAG lawyer. And we see like what each of them thinks broke them up, which is interesting that they both had like different perspectives on like why the breakup happened. It seems like there wasn't like great communication there. But going back to the love triangle stuff and like the romances in the first season's always kind of weird, because how quickly they drop the Kara and James thing, like the hottest hot potato ever. With no lead up or anything. So like it does all feel ultimately a little pointless, but I mean, I do think that they built up that James and Kara romance pretty well. They were trying to make the audience really care about it. Alex talks to her about like, you're doing this thing that you always do, which is where you just become the shoulder to lean on for people, and instead of, kind of telling people what you want from them. And Kara did try to set some boundaries and then immediately broke those boundaries down with like a hacksaw. It's just like the scene where she and Lucy talk in the restaurant. At first I thought that she had like called Lucy there, and I was like, Kara, you are being so weird right now. And then I realized that Lucy had just forgotten something at the restaurant, and I was like, oh, thank God, because otherwise that is crazy. Otherwise you need to settle. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a good introduction to Lucy. It was a little heavy on her relationship stuff with James, but like so far that's the reason she's in the show, right? So like it would be. But I think it does kind of establish Lucy as like a pretty interesting character in her own right.
Yeah, looking back into my notes, since we were wondering when she was introduced, it's weird because this episode was originally supposed to be episode 4, and Livewire I think was supposed to be episode
Oh.
5. So it's actually backwards. So I think we get the full introduction of Lucy here when it was supposed to be episode 4, and then Livewire, which was supposed to be episode 5, we find out that James and Lucy went to Ojai for Thanksgiving.
Oh, that makes so much more sense.
So Lucy and James were supposed to get back together, and then they were going to go celebrate Thanksgiving together, but because of the terrorist thing that happened in November, I guess 2015, whatever that time period was, it got flipped and switched around. So yeah, so it's a weird time situation there. So if you're watching it on Netflix for the first time, you're gonna be like, "What is happening?" But yeah,
Oh
so this,
yeah, I completely forgot that in the last episode they mentioned that they were like at Thanksgiving together, because that does, like, if you think that makes no sense at all. Oh man, now I want to kind of like go back, like do my own Supergirl Radio rewind and listen to the episode that you and like Carly did. Or was
this
it
this
Teresa?
would have been Teresa.
I think you're right, Teresa.
Carly didn't join until like episode 15, maybe Solitude. I think.
Ah. I'd like to listen to you and Teresa talk about this one, be like, or like the last one, and be like, wait, they're together already? And then the next episode, it's like, should we get back together? It's like, Anthony, you just went to Ojai for Thanksgiving. What is the trajectory of your relationship, you guys? Get help.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really funny. I wonder if it would play. I mean, you could do this now that they're like on Netflix. You could play them in the right order. I wonder how that would play, if that would play more logically.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't, because they could, in streaming, they could, they could add them in production order if they wanted to, but everywhere I know it's in airing order. So,
Huh. I see Daryl says Netflix has the episodes in the correct order, but
let me see.
that might just be airing order, not necessarily
I'm going into
order that
Netflix as we speak.
the order that they produced them in, because I do remember that the last episode we watched was like the Thanksgiving one, right? Am I wrong? What is time?
Yeah, in this, Netflix has the airing order. So it
Okay,
has
yeah,
the
that's what I
order that
thought.
we're doing it. Yeah, so they have it as Livewire is episode 4, and How Does She Do It is episode 5. So Netflix
Hagel
is using airing order.
Hagel Blast in the chat says they're on the Blu-rays in the right order. So
I'll have
that's
to go back and look at that.
fascinating. I wonder.
That
Because I
is
wonder how
an
it would
interesting.
how it would feel if you, some of the storylines, especially like the Jean stuff, which I think was either in episode 3, maybe a little bit, was like a little bit of a lead up to that, or like maybe there was some of it in episode. I remember it was in like recent episodes, like maybe 3 or 4, where there were some hints that like, what's going on with John? And I wonder if that, like that, the storyline, the arc of that
Yeah,
would make a
it
little bit more
builds.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
would
yeah.
make a little bit more sense, because in this episode alone we have, his eyes glowing, and then when the bomb situation, he sends Alex out of the room, and he's like, Space Dad got this, and and deactivates the bomb, and then he's like, oh, this one was a dud. The old "this one was a dud" trick. When it wasn't a dud. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely setting up. They're doing like a really careful plotting with the, Jean is actually Martian. Or Hank Henshaw is actually Martian Manhunter, Jean Jones. That I feel like they probably were like, oh man, when they had to like change the episode order.
Yeah, they do I thought, a little bit of foreshadowing in this episode about Martian Manhunter, because Hank tells Supergirl that if he were to follow her, she wouldn't even know he was there. So
Ah.
I started thinking about, well, how would Martian Manhunter do that? And my only thought was, well, I mean, he could probably do it several ways. He could probably phase through things, or he could shapeshift into different people, and she would never know it. So I thought that was foreshadowing for Martian Manhunter. I don't know if that's the way it was intended, but that's how I, in hindsight, pieced that together. So I thought that was really good.
I like that. I like that you can like kind of see his lines a couple different ways based on like where they are in the show now and what we know. Because honestly, I will say, and I've said a couple times, like that twist in season 1, like mid season 1, I think is when they reveal that he's actually like Martian Manhunter. I did not see it coming. I thought he was going to end up being a villain. So I was like the red eyes and like, like I was reading into everything because again, he's also called Hank Henshaw. So they were really misdirecting everybody. And then that twist, I remember everybody freaking out about the Martian Manhunter twist and being so excited about it. And I think going back and revisiting, they did such a good job of like, putting some tension into that, putting some mystery there. I don't, it was hard. It would have been hard to figure it out. You could have maybe guessed it, but it would have been hard to call it. It wasn't like incredibly telegraphed or anything.
Yeah, and that goes back to the fact that they had a vision in season 1. They had a plan. They were going somewhere because I don't think they decided to do Martian Manhunter with David Harewood until after the pilot. So once they had finished the pilot, then they knew that they wanted to go with Martian Manhunter, and they started teasing that out. So it's another reflection of how you can tell, or I can tell, that a show has an idea of what they want to do and where they want to go. I can't say that for some of the following seasons that happened in the series, but especially the ones later on in the series towards the end. But in season 1, there was definitely a momentum of storylines and character arcs that were going somewhere.
Yeah, it feels like there was tighter plotting in season 1, even though, ironically, in season 1, there are a lot more like villains of the week than some of the later seasons would have. But it felt like the season overall knew where it wanted to start characters and end characters and like major milestones it wanted to hit along the way. And I think, early on that Martian Manhunter storyline, when they decided it after the pilot, they were like, yeah, let's like make it a mystery. Let's tease it. And like, I think that they did a great job with it.
Yeah, I think they did as well. So Morgan, were there any other things that you wanted to bring up about the episode that we didn't already talk about?
Well, I just wanted to read some feedback about of Lucy Lane because this comment made me laugh. Mara says, really like Lucy. Excited she's in a cult now. And then Kenny said, I like the Supergirl TV series Lucy Lane much better than the Superman and Lois Lucy Lane. So, I mean, again, I need to catch up on Superman and Lois. But I hear some amazing things are happening with Lucy Lane over on that show.
If you need to, after you finish Stargirl, just watch season 2 of Superman and Lois. That'll get you to the good Lucy Lane stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's basically a different character for the most part. There's no mention of her DEO time, her time at Catco. So who knows what version of Lucy Lane that is, but definitely different
it's not
interpretations.
The same universe anymore, right?
No,
so
no.
They don't have to play by our rules. They're just like, let's take this from the Supergirl comics and that from the Supergirl comics and this from the Supergirl TV show. We're not in the same universe, so we can do what we want. It's like, you know what? Respect, fine.
You know what? I guess if they want to do it, it's their prerogative to do it. But it does feel a little bit like a slap in the face, but it's their TV show, not mine. But yeah, so Lucy is, this is her first big episode. If you had watched this before Livewire, So it's a little bit complicated, but Lucy is now kind of being introduced into the series. And there was another line at the beginning of the episode where Supergirl is talking to Alex in the DEO, and she's telling Alex about James and Lucy, and she says something about, I wouldn't be surprised if she could fly. And I remember when I watched this episode when it first aired, and I even thought it when I rewatched this because I was mad that we never saw it. But in the comics, in the Sterling Gates run, Lucy Lane becomes Superwoman, and she's a villain, and she can fly. She's got Kryptonian powers in that run, and I think they were probably going to go there. I think that line, to me, insinuated if we ever get to talk to somebody like an Ali Adler, I would be interested to know if they had a plan for Lucy Lane, because it seemed like they were building Lucy up to be something more than what she became. Obviously, when season 1 had to go to Vancouver and some of those season 1 characters got lost in
translation,
lost in translation. But I think that line where she's like, I wouldn't even be surprised if she could fly. I think that was a Superwoman reference. So I'm a little
honestly
bummed
wouldn't
we
be
never
surprised.
saw it. Yeah, because if I remember correctly, Ali Adler during season 1, when she was doing promotional things for the Supergirl TV series, I remember one interview where she had her Sterling Gates's books in the shot. So she talked about Kryptonese, and she had Sterling Gates's run. So I have a feeling that she knew about Superwoman, and it makes me cry on the inside.
Yeah, Daryl says the same. I think Lucy Lane as Superwoman was the plan if she had stayed on the show. Yeah, unfortunately, when they had to move, so it's so funny that like some of the things were foiled for something as pedestrian almost as like where people live and production locations, because that's why we lost Cat Grant when they moved from Los Angeles to Vancouver. A lot of those actors live in Los Angeles. Like that's where they live. That's their home. So like, yeah, sure, I'll do Supergirl. Like, why not? Like, I don't have to move. But going to Vancouver is very different. And that's why Callista Flockhart bowed out, because she was like, I don't want to go live in Vancouver for like a good chunk of the year. I want to live at home, which is, you can't falter for that. But I'm assuming that the Lucy Lane's actress, Jenna, I can't ever remember her last name.
Dewan?
Yeah, I assume that it was probably a similar situation where she didn't want to go live in Canada, and she wasn't really under a contract. She was a guest at the time, so she was just like, bye. And then we never saw her or Maxwell Lord ever again.
Ever again. They could have at least brought them back at the end of the show.
What would have been amazing is if in the finale, out of nowhere and with no explanation, much like the gun and shooting the owl,
Helen Slater,
or the lizard people,
just like a Kryptonian shooting owls,
just like a Kryptonian, and then the randomly appearing and disappearing lizard people that made all of us feel as if we were in a fever dream. What if they had just like what if suddenly Maxwell Lord and Lucy Lane are just there as if, but there's no explanation, and it's as if they've always been there, and they're like, oh, that was a hard one, right, Lucy? And Lucy was like, just like always, Kara. And then she just turned and stared at the camera and was like, just fully broke the fourth wall. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you doing to us now? I think that would have been amazing. I feel like if you're gonna go and have a finale that is as weird as the finale of this show was, like, go all the way. Just start randomly bringing back minor characters from season 1, Too Many Cooks style.
That would have been incredible. Just following up on the Superwoman stuff, Hagel Blast says Jenna said in an interview back in the day that the plan was for Lucy to eventually become Superwoman.
Aww.
Yeah, man,
that makes me sad.
We really missed out on that, because season 1, really, if you read the Sterling Gates run, a lot of the stuff that's in his run on Supergirl pops up in the Supergirl TV show in season 1. Bizarro Girl, Reactron, Silver Banshee, the Lucy Lane aspect of it. So a lot of it is there in the Sterling Gates run. So it was very clear to me that Ali Adler had done her homework. So I'm just super bummed that we didn't get to ever see that.
Yeah, Daryl makes a good comment in the chat. He says, I can understand not seeing an actor because of availability, but they just didn't mention them ever again, like they never existed. Like, I've never seen a show ghost its own characters before so thoroughly. It was like they were trying to gaslight the audience into being like, I don't know who you mean, Maxwell Lord? Who's Maxwell Lord? It's like, what? He was just here.
It's like Mariah Carey. I don't know her.
I don't know her.
And then putting the sunglasses.
And then Supergirl slowly walks away from you like, oh, awkward.
Mara asks in the chat, isn't Lana Superwoman on Superman and Lois in Bizarro Land? So Lana is a super character. She has on Bizarro World, the Lana Lang there does have some superpowers. What I'm interested in, this is sort of a tangent, but Lana Lang in the comics becomes the character of Superwoman, which is a little bit different from the Lucy Lane version of Superwoman, but she has not become Superwoman officially on the show. But if it was my show, that's where I would go with Lana Lang, because in the comics, Superwoman, Lana Lang Superwoman ends up romantically in a relationship with John Henry Irons, who is Steel. And you've got a Steel on the show. And Lana Lang got divorced on the show. Spoiler alert. I just spoiled Superman and Lois.
I saw that coming from the pilot. Don't worry.
So if you have Lana Lang romantically available and you tease her having superpowers and John Henry Irons is there with his daughter, why wouldn't you have Lana Lang be Superwoman and get together with John Henry Irons? That's just what I would do if I was a showrunner, but who knows what they'll do in season 3. So yeah, that's it was teased, but nothing official for Superman and Lois.
And jumping ahead just a second to the end of season 1, which spoiler alert, but also, I mean, you've seen it. But Miss Fiction Fanatic says, wasn't Lucy co-head of the DEO at the end of season 1? The DEO does not have a good track record with female directors.
I can't remember why she comes in though.
I'm pretty sure that's right though. I vaguely remember.
No, she becomes head of the DEO, but I can't remember why. I think we'll get there in our Supergirl Radio Rewind rewatch. So maybe we'll get there in our going back in time. But yeah, that's definitely the case. She had several jobs. She was like a legal person at Catco. She was the director of the DEO. She was a major in the military.
Yeah.
She did all kinds of things.
She was, one could argue, she was like, I can have it all. And by it all, I mean every job available. I'm surprised she wasn't like a lunch lady in the Catco cafeteria also in her spare time, and like maybe like a fighter pilot. I don't know. Like just keep adding jobs on top of it.
Yeah, this is what I thought. New Rachel says Lucy comes in when Jean is outed as a Martian. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to say it. So thank you for confirming that. That was the only thing I could think of. But yeah, so I'm trying to remember what episode that is. I feel like we might
towards the end of the season, right?
Yeah. But the order of the episodes is kind of bumbling around in my brain.
Yeah,
but yeah, Lucy does have a lot of jobs in season 1 of Supergirl.
I'd also kind of forgotten like how long they were dragging out the Win has a thing for Kara storyline in season 1, and I remember really hating it back in the day when I was watching, and I was like, I don't care about these love triangles. I hate these love triangles, and I feel like I'm just fine with it now. I just like don't care. I guess the show kind of broke my spirit in that way, where I was like, I mean, it's not great, and I don't care about it. I'm not like invested in it as a viewer, but like it's fine. It's not offensive to me. All right. Because they have that like moment where, you know, he says something about Kara and he's just like looking off wistful into the distance. And you're like, oh, Win.
Yeah, he says something like, you're getting killed, Win, or something like that. And he's like, every day, kid.
Yep.
Which I thought was really endearing for Win. I was pulling for Win in the love triangle, and it's just weird to me that they tease this love triangle and then they do address it from Wynn's point of view a little bit, but it's kind of awkward and strange, and it's like, why even put it there in the first place?
Yeah, it did. It felt like it was like kind of one of my bigger gripes about season 1 back when I was watching it, is that it felt like they ultimately didn't really do anything with it, and so like why did we need it? Like even rewatching, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think that we need like 2 love triangles concurrently. So
Yeah.
like there was Kara liking James while Wynn liked Kara, but now Lucy's there. So now it's a love square because now Lucy and James are a thing, but Kara likes James. Does James like Kara? Question mark. And also Wynn likes Kara. Does Kara like Wynn? Probably not. It's certainly not up to the caliber of, say, the Lost Love Square.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people hated at the time, but like going back and watching the show, I was like, I don't know, I'm fine with it. Everyone in this love square is real hot, and I'm okay. I'm chill with it.
If you don't know, Morgan, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're referring to the Jack, Kate, Juliet, Sawyer
That's
love
right.
square. Yeah. Kate and Jack loved each other, but Kate and Sawyer also at some point maybe loved each other, definitely got stuck in cages together.
Sure,
And
they
then
did.
Jack and Juliet had feelings for each other, but then Juliet and Sawyer, Constance together. So yeah, that one was very complicated, but all worked out in the end, I think.
It did.
All good.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was not up to I feel like unless you're gonna do something that's like as dramatic as the Lost one, and even still, like people did not like that Lost one. Like maybe like you want to pare down your romantic drama to like just a couple of characters. Like it doesn't need 4, probably. Probably 3 is enough. You might want to cap it at 3.
Yeah, it just seems like the Wynn stuff, looking back, it just was a little pointless.
Yeah.
I did want to update, since we were talking about it. Hank reveals himself as Martian Manhunter in the episode Falling. So that is, I think we will get there. Is Falling, let's see, Falling is episode 16. Yep, the 16th episode. So we will be rewatching that. So you'll get that in Supergirl Radio Rewind, which is not easy to say. I don't know why we called it that, because it's very difficult to say Radio Rewind. It was a mistake.
It's a tongue twister.
It really is. I have to think about it very extensively before I even open my mouth. Okay, so anything else before we wrap up our thoughts on how does she do it? Is there anything we missed?
No, I do feel like this episode was like kind of trying to imply that like Maxwell Lord was like flirting with Alex.
Oh yes.
And Alex was like, I don't know, guy. I don't know. But yeah, I forgot that they were in season 1, there was kind of like an implied like a flirtation between the two of them. And it's like, is it a flirtation or does she just really not like him? But I thought that those two actors had really good chemistry. So I did like them in those scenes together. I feel like there was like a real tension there of like them not seeing eye to eye or not agreeing, but having that kind of like almost understanding of each other, that like these are two like incredibly driven people, and kind of like a touche sort of vibe in their scenes, and I really like that. It is a shame that they didn't keep Maxwell Lord around a little bit longer, because he was a pretty fun villain.
Yeah, I almost want to see what the show would have been like if they had tried the Alex Maxwell Lord romance, because there is something interesting about how he hates the government, doesn't want the government solving his problems, and Alex is the government essentially. And then Alex having a romantic relationship with him would have caused problems with her sister probably. So there actually would have been a lot of like good juicy drama that would have come out of that. So I don't know. There's an element to that I wish we could have seen that play out, but they obviously went in a much different direction with Alex. But uh, I don't want to say, I keep struggling because I want to say there's part of me, but there's all of me, wishes on some level that I could have seen that play out and seen what kind of uh, you know tension that would have brought with all the characters involved.
I feel like it would have, like, in season 2 when she's dating Maggie, she would be like, "Yeah, my ex is kind of like a billionaire evil person. Listen, we all make mistakes." Yeah, I feel like that could have been really interesting. I think it would have been kind of weird, but I did like those actors together in scenes, and I think having more of, like, the Alex and Maxwell Lord's sparring scenes, I would have enjoyed, like, going forward. But then, the show just dropped him off of the face of the earth, and we never really heard from him again. I'm sure he's doing great.
I'm sure he's doing great. Hagel Blast in the chat reminds me that in the finale, when Mariette is about to destroy humanity, Max and Alex are holding hands. I'd forgotten about that. That's a good call.
I forgot about that entirely.
So they, again, there was a plan. It seemed like they were going somewhere, and then I guess they reworked some things in season 2 very clearly, but it seemed like they were trying to do something there, even at the end of the season. Well, I only wanted to mention one more thing. Well, two more things that I noticed kind of in my rewatch, because I have notes for all of these episodes that I initially made, so I don't have to really go back and write all of my notes. But I've been trying to track the way I see the episode upon rewatch. And I really liked the opening of the episode where Supergirl's flying around the city and she says, "There was a time when I felt like a shadow of a person." And I didn't really put it together. It seems so obvious, but I didn't put it together until I rewatched it for this episode of Supergirl Radio, where she's talking about feeling like a shadow of a person. And while she's flying around the city, there are shadows of her on the buildings. And I thought, that's probably a little on the nose, but I thought it was a nice touch to do that. It was very subtle. So I really liked that. And then also I noticed that her flight, Supergirl's flight, looked a little different in
really?
This episode. It almost looked like there were little puffs of smoke when she was flying, and it doesn't really, I don't know, I'm trying to think in later seasons what that looks like, but it seemed different to me for some reason. So that did seem to be something that stuck out to me when I was looking at her flight. But this is a really good episode for Supergirl powers. When she's going through those tests and she has to save the building with her strength and use her heat vision to fix the building, and then she flies up and then uses her super breath to put out the fire. It's just really good. The digital Supergirl that they make to put in those shots, you can tell that they spent some money on that because it looks really good. So even though some of it looks dated, some of that CGI I think still holds up.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, like, the CGI for the most part looks pretty good. And honestly, I've watched some stuff recently that looks worse than this. So you know what? When they had that CBS money, they were spending it well.
Yeah. So lots of good Supergirl action, which I appreciate in this episode, because I hate to keep referencing the later seasons, but in later seasons, we didn't get to see as much Supergirl action like that. So I'm trying to really relish getting to see that in season 1, because the show focused on Kara and got to show her at her Supergirl best, which is very exciting for me. All right. Well, we do have some feedback for this episode. Daryl wrote in to say this about the episode. He says, quote, "The episode introduced a question even years later they've never bothered to answer. How does Supergirl's outfit fit under her Kara clothes? Also, Kara should have to show ID when picking Carter up. We all know it's her, but really it could have been anyone. How do Kara and Carter get back to Catco?"
Yeah, the security at that school was pretty lax for it being a rich people school.
Yeah, you would think that she would have to identify herself on some level. Maybe we just didn't see that. Maybe we just, kind of glossed
I
over that when she was there.
I also laughed at like the idea, like Kat thinks that she's picking Carter up in a car, and then she just comes walking up like no car, and then she's like, I just imagine Carter being like, "Wait, we have to walk back to the office, all the way back to the office."
Yeah, how do they get back there? That is the question. Hopefully, Cara knows something about mass transit and
Well, I was
bus.
about to say, I feel like
buses.
Carter. We've established Carter's really good at like the subway system in National City. That's how he got to his train. So
Carter's really teaching Cara, I think.
I
at
think
this
so.
point.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Daryl goes on to say, quote, "I know the first season was filmed in California, but they really should have given Supergirl pants back then, seeing as how she hovered over the crowd after saving the building." Yeah, that's a good point. She definitely was there over the crowd. Daryl also says they're always having Kara slip up in what she says, and I hardly think it's fair since I doubt Clark has the same problem, unquote. I think Clark probably does slip up a little bit sometimes when he's speaking. He's usually pretty confident as Superman, confident with his relationship with Lois, but I'm sure on the Daily Planet and even some of the Tyler Hoechlin stuff, the way he's portrayed, especially on the Supergirl TV series, I imagine he's a Clark who bumbles around a little bit. So I don't think it's just a Kara thing. Although I don't mind that Kara slips up when she's speaking. I like it sometimes when she's kind of unsure of herself as Kara and maybe says the wrong thing.
She's really new at this too. Like this is
Yeah.
episode what, like 5? And she only really becomes Supergirl in episode 1. So like she's really new to the whole Supergirling thing. So yeah, she's gonna slip up from time to time and be like, "Oh yeah, when I was flying on a
Yeah.
plane."
But I loved school because I got to learn about this planet. I mean, the place where I also am from.
That was the best.
I don't mind that at all. I think that's actually a really nice quality for Kara to have because it shows that she's not perfect. Maybe as Supergirl, she does all these fantastic things, but she's not a perfect being. Daryl goes on to say, quote, "The episode would have been much better if it didn't make us sit through scenes with a former couple that's doomed from the start. Does anyone else think the show didn't quite know what to do with Lucy? Aside from her relationship drama with James, she had no less than 3 jobs on the show." And then Daryl ends the email with, "How does James, as Catco's newest employee, get left in charge? It never made sense," unquote. My guess to that is just Cat knew James from way back when at the Daily Planet, and she could trust him to do those jobs when maybe she couldn't trust someone else. My only question about the nitty gritty of Catco is, aren't there managers for things? Don't they have a higher up, like an executive
Yeah, like
organization?
where's their executive team? Why is James doing anything for digital? Why is James allowed to touch anything in digital? He is a photojournalist at this point. Like, why is he like, all right, well, I gotta go whip those marketing people into shape? It's like, do you? Why, James? where are their managers? Like, why is this company falling apart because Cat Grant is gone for like an afternoon? She needs to stop micromanaging that company and like start hiring some middle managers.
She needs to delegate some of those jobs. She doesn't need to be. No wonder she can't have it all because Cat's just doing all the jobs.
Seriously.
Stop doing so much work. Okay, well, I think that's going to end it for our discussion of the episode. But I think before we get out of here, I think we should make some snap judgments. In the game of Snap Judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, our first snap judgment is would you rather play video games with Win or have an epic Nerf gun battle with Kara?
That's a tough one because I would like to hang out with Kara, but Win seemed to have a lot of hate to say this, but junk food and, sort of almost like tailgate food while they were playing games. And that seemed like really fun and chill. And they were doing it on the big wall of monitors in Kat's office, which would probably have actually been difficult. I don't know that would have been easy.
Yeah, the way that
to see.
Like the video was like segmented through across all of those monitors, I feel like would give me a headache eventually. Like just trying to look at everything.
I like the pigging out with the video game situation with Wen, but also I probably should pick the Nerf gun battle with Kara because A, I get to hang out with Kara, and then B, I'd probably have to run around, which would give me some exercise. So I
get your steps in.
So I probably shouldn't pick the junk food, even though that probably would be more fun. So I'll probably pick the Nerf gun battle with Kara.
Yeah, I think I'd do the Nerf gun battle with Kara only because Win looks like he's somebody who's like really good at video games. And I'm not really good at video games. I've been told I'm mildly bad at them. And so, I feel like I would just be continually losing to win. And that's no fun, even if there were snacks involved. So I'd rather go with Kara, who I'm definitely going to lose to because she is Supergirl. But there might be some fun action-packed shenanigans in between. There's some bonding, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Kara could really cheat if she wanted to. She could use her X-ray vision to find where you're hiding. She could super speed and kind of knock you out before you can get to her. Yeah, it would probably... You would have to set some rules, I think, if you were going to have a Nerf gun battle with Kara.
Okay. Would you rather have to temporarily run digital marketing or deal with Catco's live cameras?
I would rather have to monitor the live cameras. I don't know what Catco's news section of the company looks like, but I think I would probably be able to jump in there if I had to on a last minute covering for Cat.
Yeah, it's wild that they made James do all this stuff. I have to look at the live cameras and I have to run this thing down and I have to answer this thing from digital marketing. It's like, aren't there managers for all of these things? Why is he doing it? Cat, delegate. With that said, I feel like I would have big ideas for the digital marketing department. She would come back and I would have taken that over. And she would be like, what are you doing? I didn't tell you to do any of this. And I would be like, hey, queen for the day, right? And she's like, that is not the title I gave you. And so that's how I would be briefly hired and briefly fired from Catco.
Morgan would be like, who's the queen of all media now?
I'm like, guess what? Digital department, you're mine. Wahaha. It's also kind of what I do in my day-to-day. So it's wouldn't be that exciting to do it for Catco, but also I could do it. Right? And maybe she comes back and she's like, Morgan, you're doing such a great job. You know what? You're right. I do need a manager for that. It's weird that I'm doing it myself. But I know that's what I've been saying. And suddenly, your girl's the manager marketing at Catco.
Have you ever seen the classic comedy movie 9 to 5?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
That's what I'm imagining with you, because in that movie they kidnap their boss, and while he's kidnapped and kind of stowed away in a house, the three ladies take over and make all these changes in the office and make everything better. Everything is better in the office while this terrible boss is tied up. So I imagine that you're the 9 to 5 ladies, coming in, changing everything, making new rules, and everyone is happier in the office because
exactly. That's exactly what it would be like. I would be like the Dolly Parton in this situation.
No, I think you would be more like the Lily Tomlin.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
The Lily Tomlin in 9 to 5, she's the one who implements all the policies and she has all the ideas and she never gets credit for them. So I think you would definitely be the Lily Tomlin there. So I'm excited about this new direction for Catco. I think it's the right way to go. All right. Well, I think that's going to take us out of Snap Judgments. No judgments on your Snap Judgments. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio Rewind. And so at this point, I think we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and some DC TV podcast plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Blacklight and Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you, Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
And since this episode featured Cat Grant's son, we have Cat Grant designs in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store that we'd like to suggest.
Yeah, we have some Catco Worldwide Media designs and a Keep Calm and Chop Chop, which is Cat Grant's catchphrase, chop chop. So if you'll remember that from when Cat Grant was on the show, and you would like some stuff to show your support of Catco, the worldwide media company that we don't fully understand. I actually have a worldwide Catco Worldwide Media shirt.
Nice.
So if you like Cat Grant, which you should, I think, we have some designs for Catco in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store if you would like to check those out. Well, we would also like to remind everyone that we are currently running a new DC TV Podcast plug contest because we need new plugs. They're very out of date. The ones we're using are wonderful, but there are shows that have been canceled, shows that are being added. So we need to get some new plugs. So here is some information on how to enter that contest.
Supergirl Radio needs new DC TV podcast plugs, which means that we are holding another plugs contest. And we invite you to submit your recordings of how you would promote the DC TV podcast on Supergirl Radio. We want you to do that so that I do not have to do that. It's very important that you do it so I don't have to. You can be as creative as you want to be, but we do have one requirement, and that's that you need to make sure you mention all of our podcasts in the DC TV Podcast Network. And in case maybe you have forgotten what those are, I will list them like so. That's Supergirl Radio. That's the one that you're listening to right now. The Flash Podcast, Legends of Tomorrow Podcast. I hear that one's really great.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. The Lituation Room, DC on HBO Max Podcast, which maybe one day will be sponsored by HBO Max. HBO Max, where I like to watch stuff. The Stargirl Podcast, Superman and Lois Radio. They're not in the Arrowverse, but we're still allowing them to be on the network. What a ring that probably threw them for, where they're like, excuse me, we're not in the Arrowverse. Green Lantern Podcast, the Sandman Podcast, Justice League Dark Podcast, and DC TV After Dark.
I hear that one's pretty good too.
That one's fine. That one's fine. That one I think is still being workshopped. So how do you get on Supergirl Radio? What you do is you email an MP3, a WAV, or an M4A to supergirlradio@gmail.com by our contest deadline, which is September 30th. We will choose the winner, and the winner will receive a prize in the mail, which will consist of Superman Family Adventures, Volume 1, DC Super Pets, Superpowered Pony, which is a story about Comet the Super Horse, and maybe also an additional surprise.
We might sneak something that you didn't expect in there.
Just might.
And if you would like to support us on our Supergirl Radio Patreon and become a Legion of Super sponsor, you can do that by visiting patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. We have 4 monthly levels for you to choose from. And we would like to thank our current Patreon supporters, Michael, Sam, Anne-Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Ermgard, Miriam, Nicole, Lizeth, Faith, Brian, Ethan, and Danny. And we thank you all for your support. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can do that at the Derby Kid. I'm also on a social media platform called Vero. If you would like to follow me over there, I'm at Derby Kid. Vero really is the best social media platform. It's actually pretty quiet over there. You just get to share things you like, and other people sometimes will like your stuff, and you get to see pretty pictures, and you get to see what everybody else is watching and get recommendations for movies and TV shows, and it's just a great place. It's almost like going to a social media platform that doesn't have any noise. Like you go to Twitter and now Instagram, and everything is just noise. Vero, so good. Highly recommend you check out Vera if you haven't. I'm at Derby Kid over there. I'm also on a personal YouTube channel of mine at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. Getting back to my Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern live stream of reading Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice reviews from the top critics of Rotten Tomatoes. And these are reviews that were negative. So I'm going through them and trying to figure out why they were negative, and it's a slow descent into madness for me. So if you're interested in watching that, to follow that journey, feel free to join me at youtube.com/duckmilkprod Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's an exercise in art criticism and of trying to read someone's opinion I disagree with without getting worked up over it, and it is a practice that I'm still having to practice. So if you want to hang out with me, feel free to do that.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, at Mojotastic, and you can also find me on DC TV After Dark, and you can find me on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast, which actually this week we are recording our state of the DC, TV, DC universe, DCEU, kind of like everything that's going on with the CW and the WB and all of that good, fun, not confusing at all stuff. I'm a business major now, and I specialize in tax write-offs. So, so if you have feelings about all of the crazy stuff that's been going on with the CW and the demise of our poor legends, but also all the stuff going on with WB and shelving completely almost nearly finished movies and things like that, disappearing stuff off of our good friend HBO Max, feel free to send an email before Thursday evening to our email address, which is something which is the legendspodcast@gmail.com. And I'm sure we'll be reading some feedback if people send stuff in, but we're going to have a very informal chat about like what's going on. So that should be fun, because honestly, the news just kept piling on top of each other. And we were like, I guess we should do something about this.
I don't know. I'm actually interested in the moves that these new people with Warner Brothers Discovery are making. Because when I saw that they got rid of reliable sources on CNN, I was like, Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Nobody watched that show and it never made any money. There's no reason to keep it around. I was like, okay, now we're making Rebecca Johnson like moves. I approve of this.
But they also like disappeared like 200 episodes of Sesame Street off of HBO Max. Like I think weird things are happening. It does feel like they are like almost purposely trying to tank HBO Max, or just taking a bunch of stuff off of the platform. Some people from Cartoon Network complained about like shows that just completely disappeared off of the HBO Max platform that used to be on there that aren't available anywhere else. So like those people who worked really hard on those shows like just don't have a show to point to anymore to tell people that like, hey, I worked on that, or like, hey kids, this is my show. It's just kind of gone into the ether, which I think is an important point that now I'm going to start winning some arguments with my husband because he doesn't believe in physical media. And yet,
this is why you got to buy those Sesame Street Blu-rays.
There you go. Listen, if they ever disappear Buffy off of streaming, I have DVDs from the early 2000s that unfold like this. And I have every episode. I'm ready for this like post-apocalyptic situation where I have to continue unfolding the DVDs. Why did they package them like that?
I don't know. They never worked.
The DVDs would then come unglued, unmoored from the case, and then they would just kind of shimmy around, and then so you'd be watching them, and then it would just like freeze up, and you'd be like, oh no, then you'd take the DVD out and you gently blow on it. Listen, a whole new generation is about to find out that experience because they keep disappearing things that people like. So if you love it and you can't imagine not ever watching it again, buy it on physical media. That is my PSA for the day.
Yeah, I don't trust streaming, and physical media, much better quality. And I hope that instead of taking things off Cartoon Network, because I used to work at Turner, so I worked on all the Cartoon Network stuff. There were a lot of good shows on Cartoon Network. Not everyone was a winner. But also, if anything has to go off HBO Max, it should be the Adult Swim content. Some of that was not good at all. If you want to see what I mean, go try to watch an episode of Mr. Pickles. It's if I had to explain it, it was a series about a demon dog, a dog that was a demon. I refused to work on it whenever it was like, can someone else do this episode of Mr. Pickles? I feel like it is dirty on my soul. Can someone else?
I hate this show. Please help me.
Can someone else who is not bothered by this, could you please work on this? It was borderline satanic. I could not watch. Like I physically would get ill watching it. So
watching Mr. Pickles, I just like that the name justified with like how much you hate it. It's like Rebecca's most hated thing. Oh really? What's that? Mr. Pickles.
Well, that was the whole point, is like Mr. Pickles was just supposed to be the neighborhood friendly dog, but really he would go underground and he was satanic and did demon stuff. And I was like, nope, I can't watch this. This is not a thing.
You're like, I need a break from this. I need a break from Mr. Pickle, the Mr. Pickles of it all.
So if any show has to go from HBO Max, get rid of Mr. Pickles. If you need help with the consultation of what needs to go, what needs to stay, I'm happy to offer my free services from my 14 years of working on that content. All right. Well, I guess hang out with the Legends of Tomorrow podcast to get more on those happenings as we progress in this new world of Warner Brothers Discovery and seeing what happens to all of our DC stuff. But until you do that, this is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And thanks for joining us for Supergirl Radio Rewind.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!